Today's rally comes in the face of rising tensions between the U.S. and China. President Trump promising what he calls a conclusive report showing that the coronavirus outbreak began in China. China's state-run media, though, firing back. Evil, spitting poison, filthy behavior, propaganda warfare. Those are just some of the words China's media is using to describe the Trump administration. Let's bring in Clete Willems. He served as deputy director of the National Economic Council in the Trump administration. He's a CNBC contributor as well. Clete, great to have you with us.
Thanks.
This sort of nationalistic rhetoric coming from state media reminds me, at least, of the depths of the U.S.-China trade war. Are we in for tensions to that degree, in your view?
I actually think that it could be much worse than that. And what I've been telling people is I see the makings of a Cold War here. And I know that's language that makes people uncomfortable, but I'm intentionally being provocative because the last thing I want to see is for us to sleepwalk into this without a clear understanding of what's happening, without a clear understanding of what our strategy is for dealing with it. And I'm worried about that. Obviously, I hope that there can be de-escalation. But de-escalation does require both sides to make some concessions. And for China's part, I think China does need to come clean, does need to submit to an international investigation. If they have nothing to hide, don't threaten retaliation to everyone who wants to investigate this, whether it's the U.S., the EU, or Australia. Submit to that, and let's get the facts on the table. And then hopefully we can come back to a more sober place.
Do you think that's the strategy? During the U.S.-China trade war, we understood what the U.S. wanted to extract from China. We went into negotiations thinking, are we going to get an end to, for example, forced technology transfer? In this case, these are potentially retaliatory tariffs in response to China's alleged role in this. I mean, is the negotiating tactic, let us into your lab so we can investigate, and then we'll peel these tariffs back? That seems to be a losing proposition. I mean, the likelihood, in my view, of China saying, hey, come on into the Wuhan virus lab to investigate seem pretty slim.
Right. I think it's important to disaggregate two things here. I think you need to look at what's happening directly in relation to the coronavirus and questions about its origins, and then what's happening with respect to broader economic issues with China. And the way that I see it is this. With respect to the coronavirus, what the U.S. wants is an investigation. And that's what it would like to see. And then if the investigation does reveal that China was suppressing information, there was a cover-up, that they were spreading propaganda, they may respond to that. But independent of it, there's going to be an assessment of all of these other economic issues with China. And I think given the climate and the animosity towards China, you're going to see a shorter leash. And that's where I think tariffs could come into play, which is, when you look at the trade deal right now, I think by and large, China's doing a pretty good job on the structural side of things, on ag and on intellectual property. But there are real problems when it comes to the purchases. And I do think that there's going to be a shorter leash on China. And that's where you could see the president decide, OK, maybe I would give him a pass in an ordinary circumstance. But given all the other things going on, I'm not going to do that anymore. And that's how I see tariffs coming into play. The White House was pretty clear last night that it's not looking at punitive measures directly in relation to the coronavirus. I think the tariff conversation is a separate one, but I do think it's a live one and it's one to watch very closely.
Clete, I'm with you on this one. I think the market's underestimating how quickly this can escalate. But in your opinion, I mean, listen, maybe the Trump administration is 100% right in their assessment of the situation. But, are we putting gasoline on the fire when we sort of adjudicate it in such a public way?
Well, again, I don't know that there's a better answer than transparency here. And I think what we know for sure is that information was slow to come out of China. And I think we want to see that information. And I'm not sure how, if China's not willing to do that on its own, it requires an international effort. And I think that's what you see going on. So I don't know another way to do it. I hear your point. But China hasn't been willing to do it. And I think that requires a different approach.
Clete, great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clete Willems. Tim, final word, quick.
Yeah, I think he's his view is that the trade agenda is not that much different with COVID than it was before, which should have you believe that each side is trying to decide how much political rope they have to be difficult in this environment. It's pretty shocking if you think this administration is thinking for the next 6 months about how they continue to cement their place with the American populace. And I think I think it's risky, but I don't disagree. The same things we wanted with China and trade war before are very much alive and well, and I think we need to be steadfast.